Imagine this, a town with just 42,000 people, a team with no money, no real history, and they suddenly win promotion to their country's top division. That sounds like it would be amazing, right? But imagine then that the club goes on to win the league championship 4 years in 5 seasons, they reach the quarterfinals of the Europa Conference League and the playoff round of the Champions League. In April 2025, they're 2-0 up on aggregate against Lazio to reach the Europa League semi-finals. And that's the recent history of Bodo Glimt, one of the most underappreciated saves on FC25 from one of the most underused regions in the game. The Scandinavian region has 3 fully licensed leagues, Denmark, Sweden and Norway, with the latter being home to Bodo Glimt. I'm also hoping that it will be home to your next save, where you try and take Bodo Glimt to European glory. This challenge really has 3 stages. The first is to try and win the Norwegian league and match their quarter-final run in Season 1. This doesn't sound that tricky, but remember, your team is 69 rated, and you'll be up against teams like 79 rated Lyon, 80 rated Bilbao, and even 81 rated Spurs. You might think the entire country is fully behind Bodo Glimt, but realistically in Norway, the atmosphere behind this club has shifted quite a lot recently, especially with fans from other clubs in Norway. Don't get me wrong, their success is not from a rich owner, it's not from luck, it's because of pure hard work. But now Bodo Glimt have way more money than every other club in the league. From a tiny provincial club up in the Arctic Circle that we were talking about earlier, to potentially building a footballing dynasty that can dominate Norway for the next couple of decades. It's no real surprise that fans of other clubs are jealous, and it's really obvious to see that on social media. You might think that this financial advantage will actually make your career mode boring, but it's actually quite far off the situation inside the game. There's no doubt that Bodo Glimt are the biggest and best club in Norway now, but Viking, Rosenborg, Brann and Molde are all just 2 or 3 signings away from getting level with Bodo Glimt, while 2 or 3 sales from Bodo Glimt could make the title a real fight. In fact, while we're talking about transfers very loosely, let's also have a look at the squad. The first player that you'll probably check up on is in midfield, Patrick Berg. This guy actually left the club back in 2022, but he came back a couple of years later in 2024, and he's by far the highest rated player the elite Syrian has ever had in FIFA. I can promise you that you will get bids for this guy, but with his history of leaving the club and coming back, I think it's not that unrealistic to reject them because he's clearly happy playing for Bodo Glimt. Left winger Jens Peter Hauge did something very similar. Just like Berg, Hauge was born in Bodo itself, the tiny town of 40,000 people, which is a very common theme for the rest of this squad. He also left the club, he left in 2021, but he came back in 2024 after spells in Milan, Frankfurt and Ghent. And he's another that I think it's realistic to keep no matter what bid you get from other AI teams. These 2 players have tasted life outside of Bodo, and they more than willingly returned to their original club. This ethos of locally born players playing for such an overachieving club is just so amazing to see. Hakon Evjen was born around 50 miles from Bodo. He's your left back, and he's another player that you'll want to keep. But guess what? He left Bodo Glimt in 2020 and also chose to return in 2024. Players leaving the club and rejoining is a consistent theme for this team. It turns out that some players just don't like life outside of the Arctic Circle, but that also gives you a really fun storyline. Sure, you can feel free to sell your best youth players if you actually find anyone good, but re-signing them if they don't hit their potential is something that Bodo loves to do. The academy is actually such a huge part of this club's identity. It's all about local born players pushing the club to the next level. And it's just crazy to see how many players in this squad are fully homegrown. Even ones that aren't homegrown fully buy into the club, like Russian goalkeeper Nikita Haikin. He tried leaving Bodo Glimt, he went to Bristol for a year and returned straight away. He's now performing heroics in the Europa League, and he's part of the reason that they are now potentially in a semi-final. With the importance of the academy, I would really consider using 3-star scouts with Bodo Glimt, just to stop the Norwegian league getting too easy if you use 4 or 5-star ones. If a player ever reaches 75 overall other than Patrick Berg, then they should probably be sold, even if you inevitably buy them back later in their career once they drop below 75 yet again. It is a shame that players always hit their potentials when playing for AI teams though, because someone like Hauge would have been an 84 rated player if he didn't start developing worse than expected, and that would have been way too good for Bodo to re-sign him a couple of years ago. Scouting the local area for players, of course, is highly recommended, but keep an eye out for players from Norway with the last name of Berg. This last name has been huge for the growth of Bodo. Of course, Patrick Berg is their best player at the minute, but Harald Berg won the Norwegian Cup in the 1970s. Ørjan Berg was the sporting director and a national team player for Norway. Runar Berg and Arlid Berg were also two of the most talented Norwegian players of the 1990s, while the unrelated Christian Berg has also played for this club. So that's probably the first part of your save done. You're now a dominant force in Norway and maybe reaching past the group stages in Europe. But now your team of Bergs is finally completed, it's time to progress to the next level, reaching the latter stages of a major European competition. Doing this in the Conference League would be fine, but really you want to be aiming for the Europa or the Champions League instead. Scandinavian teams do have a good reputation in all of these European competitions. In fact, Malmö were close to being the best team in Europe, but would lose in the Champions League final to Nottingham Forest back in the early 80s. In my opinion, Bodo are by far the best placed team in Scandinavia to break this cycle. Copenhagen might play the most attacking football in the region, but I think they're more interested in developing and selling wonder kids to bigger clubs in Europe than building a squad. Malmö are similar. Just like Copenhagen and Bodo, they have an elite level academy, but neither team can match Bodo when it comes to keeping their players all together. The family and local born aspects of the club is something that I think you really need to focus on. If you can keep morale high, keep the academy producing some good players, and maybe a few external transfers from around Scandinavia, you can grow Bodo from a 69 overall team to probably a 75, 76 overall team, at which point they're able to compete with some of the larger leagues in Europe. You can look at teams at this level like Ajax, PSV, Besiktas, Porto and Sporting. They're all around this overall rating. We've all seen how good these teams can be in Europe, and in my opinion, there's no reason that a team from Sweden, Norway or Denmark can't be on the same level as a team like Ajax, PSV or Porto. As you progress further and further into your save and you get further and further in Europe, you'll notice that the league is also starting to improve. People call this a build a nation challenge, but to begin with, you'll notice you only have a couple of European slots. I think there's one in the Champions League, one in the Europa League and one in the Conference League. Because coefficients do actually exist in career mode, if you do well in Europe, all of a sudden there'll be 2 Norwegian teams playing in the Champions League. More success will see 3 in the Champions League, maybe a couple in the Europa League and 1 in the Conference League. And this of course now gives 6 teams bigger budgets to sign better players and improve the standard throughout the league. If you want to make this challenge even harder, why not see if you can do it while only signing Scandinavian players? There's only one player that isn't Danish or Norwegian in this entire squad at the moment, and he's the goalkeeper that we mentioned from Russia earlier. There is so much talent in this area. You can see it throughout some of the biggest clubs in the world. There's a lot of potential in Norway as well, and that is the story of why you should take a tiny Norwegian team and why you really need to play them in career mode. If you're interested in a few more save ideas, then please check out my Save Ideas playlist right here and the video on the screen, which I think you'll also really enjoy. But thank you for watching, really do appreciate it. Hopefully you enjoy a save with Bodo Glimt. Let me know if you do it in the comments. Cheers and goodbye.